everyone's favorite IT guy, Benrard Holland. What's good, Tinfoil Gang? Nautilus here, and in this video we're gonna dissect this character to try to understand him better, but also to try to answer some questions about this character's actions in the story so far. Casting for Silo definitely did us a solid in hiring Tim Robbins to play the role of the ruthless, calculating, self-declared big boss of the silo. As an actor, Robbins excels in this type of role. He is pretty good at any role that requires a good helping of nuance and an understated approach. His acting style is perfect for a character that hides so much right beneath the surface, while still being intense enough to come off as a true menace when needed. Just in case you're interested in seeing more of Tim's best work, Arlington Road and Jacob's Ladder are both good films that star Robbins doing what he does best. Before we begin though, it's my duty and obligation to warn you that this video is spoiler heavy. So if that's not your thing, if that's not what you're looking for, now is your chance to click off. Although I suggest you do watch Silo because it really is that good. You can always come back later. I'll be here. Shout out to the channel patrons, all of these awesome people you see here. Much love for supporting me, and I really can never thank you enough. In fact, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to everyone in supporting the channel by just choosing to spend your time here. There are a million channels out there, but you chose to be here, and I appreciate that. Feel free to join the channel Discord if you want to talk about the shows I cover on the channel. You can find the links to both of these in the description. Well, alrighty then. We've got work to do, tinfoilers. Let's dive. If you were to ask Benrard Holland what he believes in, he'd probably tell you that he believes in the silo and all he wants is its preservation. He'd tell you that he's just a man who's had a huge responsibility fall into his lap, and it's out of his deep concern for the people of the silo that he's chosen to step up to the task and lend his unwavering support to the furtherance of the silo and its inhabitants. He'd say that's why he's that dude. That's what Benrard would say. But we both know that that's not exactly the truth. The truth is, Benrard is a very complex character, and it's not easy to figure him out, at least not initially. But it's become apparent that there is more to this dad suit wearing IT guy than meets the eye. Benrard is intentionally written to be mysterious and somewhat inscrutable, and at times, even kinda. But because he doesn't often speak in a straightforward manner, unless he's threatening someone, it's even more important to examine his actions and try to decipher what's really going on in the head of this character. For most of the story, we have no idea that Benrard is the shadow boss of the silo. He pretends to be the head of IT, an important division within the silo. Benrard Holland is presented to us as a number cruncher whose strict personality makes sense given his responsibilities. When we do find out about the true nature of his position, it becomes clear that he's adept at hiding not only who he is, but what his true intentions are. There is an active debate about whether Benrard is a good guy who just wants what's best for the silo, but was forced to make harmful decisions in order to do so. It just happened that he had to do a lot of dirt to achieve that, huh? Personally, I have issues with this characterization for reasons I'll explain at the end of this segment, but let's at least entertain the idea in some detail and see if it holds up to the scrutiny. So let's run it down. First off, all the drinking. And figures I start out with this one. There are a few scenes where we see him dipping into Mayor John Zol's stash. No big deal at first. I figured he was just a lush, and that's all the director was trying to say here. But the fact that he's seen doing this several times might signify that he's stressed out, and a few ounces of liquid courage helped keep the boat afloat. This is kind of humanizing. I must admit it shows a sense of weakness. I can see why people conclude that this makes him a little more of a sympathetic character. Another thing, he only ever wears the color gray. This one is a bit more in the category of pure speculation, but it is true that Benrard predominantly wears the color gray throughout the entire show, while Sims only wears the color black. Colors transmit ideas to us, often subconsciously. In this case, gray often symbolizes moral ambiguity. So is he always wearing gray to signal that he's a morally gray character? Neither good nor bad in the conventional sense, just a man doing his job. Okay, fair enough, but let's keep it going. He claims he never wanted to be the mayor, but the circumstances made this unavoidable. It pains his heart to have to make some of the tough decisions that resulted in the deaths of a few Siloans, but it comes with the territory. This is the "what are you gonna do?" response. It's out of his hands, according to him. He claims to believe in the silo and the pact, and all of his efforts are for the safety of the people within. A man of the law, according to him. And then of course we have the big kicker. Benrard let Juliet see George's goodbye video as an act of kindness, a sort of last meal for the death row inmate. It's been suggested that he sent Juliet out to clean with a heavy heart. I call BS on all of this. Now don't get me wrong, these are strong points to make, but I think to try to portray him as a victim of any kind, I think is I don't know if I believe that. I'll concede that the drinking does work to humanize him a bit, but it doesn't signal good guy, just stressed guy, or guy who has good taste when it comes to spirits. But either way, I can't imagine finding out that a colleague has passed and within 24 hours, I'm blitzing their personal liquor cabinet. That comes off as the opposite of respectful. I read this as him being glad to be rid of Johns. She was a problem for him because she wasn't part of the secret club of true silo rulers. Now she's gone. Salute. Also, through certain bits of dialogue and choices, we can see that while Benrard takes his job seriously, he revels in the power he uses to manipulate and even toy with others beneath him. Lucas comes to mind right away here. Lucas could have gotten off with a slap on the wrist in the form of a stern warning to keep his trap shut, but instead he got 10 years in the mines because that's the mood Benrard was in. Sad day for you. Remember, nobody knows of Lucas's supposed crimes, but Jules and Benrard. So this didn't need to happen. Benrard is not doing this to make a point or to send a message. This was unnecessary, but he did it anyway, showing malicious intent. And last but certainly not least, Benrard is the primary person responsible for every death we've seen up until now. He's the one person you can connect to every single death we've seen. If he made these decisions of his own accord, I'd have to conclude that Benrard is in fact a power-hungry wannabe dictator who saw an opportunity to take out threats to the status quo and acted on it. Sure, he's a complicated guy, but I don't know if I'd call him a good guy. He defies the rules of the pact in word and spirit whenever he sees advantage in doing so, proving that he doesn't really believe in the pact as some guiding set of rules or principle. It's a tool for controlling others. When he and Sims finally cornered Jules and revealed the whole game to her, he follows that up by framing her, lying about her saying that she wants to leave the silo. Benrard cares about one thing, power, and that's it. He's not going to let anyone get between him and that seat at the helm. Sure, he may feel a tinge of guilt here and there. He is a human being after all, but that doesn't excuse his actions and definitely doesn't put him in the category of good guy in my opinion. I mean, I would say that I have more sympathy for Sims than I do for Benrard, because at least Sims shows signs of being dedicated to something other than power and the social hierarchy of the silo. Now, as for Benrard allowing Jules to watch George's last video, I don't attribute this to kindness, but instead I think it's meant to keep Jules from acting up any further. Remember, he's witnessed this woman escape from Judicial's grip more than once. He knows how Juliet gets down and he doesn't want to have anything to do with that, so he's keeping his end of the deal to keep her calm. I even think he may have done it to hurt her one last time. Perhaps he thought she'd be so emotionally broken after seeing this that she just gives up the fight and quietly goes out to clean. It's theory time. Let's dip our toes into the shallow end of the pool first for a minute, and we're going to discuss the key fob and the hard drive, because these are two key objects that are, you could say, directly connected to this character, and I want to talk about them in further detail. There's been a lot of talk about the key fob and its purpose. We still don't know exactly why it's got this receiver that blinks and pulsates to alert the owner, but there are some spicy ideas floating out there that could be the answers we need. The simplest and most plausible idea is that the fob lights up when something goes wrong and needs to be addressed immediately. The key lights up and Benrard runs to the server room to do whatever the heck it is that it wants him to do. Maybe there are other silo leaders he confers with, maybe he talks to a giant AI that's really running the show, we don't know yet. But the fob is kind of like a bat symbol calling Benrard to action. We know that there are other silos out there, but we don't know what's going on inside of them yet. But we can guess that if there are other silos filled with people like our number 18, we could somewhat assume that they have a similar set of rules that prevent them from knowing about other silos, or at least not making contact with other silos. They probably would also have leaders just like Benrard, who are responsible for making sure the silos are kept a secret and everything's kept in order. I find it a little difficult to imagine them being able to keep this all coordinated without these people being able to talk to each other, at least in the case of an emergency, like the one we saw at the end of the final episode, where Juliet actually turns her termination into an escape. So at this point, she's out of reach of whatever signal is being piped into the visor, and just like that, she's able to see the truth. The speculation is that the reason the key fob lights up is to tell all the other leaders in the silos to shut their cameras to avoid letting anyone see Jules gallivanting on the surface wherever it is that they are. For now, we'll stick with Earth. We'll assume this is Earth. It's just seen better days. It's not doing so hot. Could be other things, but we're not going to talk about that right now. So yeah, this assumes that all of the key fobs went off at the moment she got close to the ridge, warning them to take action, whatever that really means. Another very strong possibility is that your boy Bernie was in a rush to kill the camera to prevent the audience inside from seeing that she made it over the hill, or for Benrard to prevent his own people from seeing what she saw after she made it past the hill. This assumes that she's got a camera in her helmet that records or sends back what she sees to the guys in the surveillance hub tucked away in the janitor's closet. The fact that a quote-unquote Jane Carmody video exists, that sets precedence for the idea that they record what cleaners see when they're sent out. That's really simple and it makes a lot of sense. We can't know for sure yet, but if the cafeteria cameras go dark in the beginning of season 2, then maybe that's what Benrard was out to do. I think it would be easier for him to convince the people that she died after she got over the ridge, beyond their field of view so they can't confirm it. It would be easier for him to convince them of that than to see her come back over the ridge still alive, which he wouldn't be able to refute that. There is one more option, and it's the most scandalous of them all. Benrard wanted to see what Jules sees on the other side of the ridge, because Benrard has never seen it himself. This one is full of insinuations that fly in the face of everything we've come to believe about this character. But what if it were true? What if he's really that complicated? What if Benrard sees this moment as an opportunity to see for himself what's really going on out there? In private. It could be that Benrard doesn't know as much as we think. He may be the biggest cog in the silo, but he's still just a cog. Maybe at this point he's rooting for her to survive so he can get some answers, and that would make turning off the Windows wallpaper augmented reality in her visor make a lot of sense. If that's what he did. As for the hard drive, I think this one is a lot more straightforward when trying to make sense of it. When the deadly duo finally catch up to Jules in the lowers in the final episode, Benrard does the honors by putting a hammer through the drive to send a very clear message. But if you recall the conversation he has later on with Jules in that final episode, before she's sent out to clean, she mentions this to him.
The door, the massive door made out of steel at the bottom of the silo that George found. Why don't you tell people about that?
The reaction he has appears to signal that this is either news to him or he's surprised that Jules is aware of the door at the bottom of the silo. The good news is we don't need to question it. He's definitely telegraphing a look of, oh snap, are you for real? While trying to also appear like it's not news to him at all. So Benrard believes himself to be the most knowledgeable person when it comes to the inner workings of the silo. After all, he is the boss. He knew all sorts of things that even Meadows and Sims weren't privy to. So for him to hear this, well, it had to be shocking. And knowing that this information probably came from the hard drive has got to have him wondering, what is that door for? But also, what other bits of information could he glean from this disk? Assuming he can still recover anything from the seemingly intact platter. Interesting stuff. I guess we're not going to get any answers till season 2. So is he evil? I don't know, maybe. I think of evil as someone who is either indifferent to or takes pleasure in the suffering of others, especially for selfish gain. I could see how these shoes fit Benrard to some degree. At the same time, a good person can do a bad thing with the best intentions. I certainly don't buy Benrard's woe is me song and dance. I think he likes what he does. He's just having a rough week at the office. Anyway, that's it for this one. Benrard is a fun character to discuss, so I hope you enjoyed this video. There's more to come. Let me know what you think of Benrard in the comments. Do you like him as a character or not? And what do you think his motives are? Share your theories if you want to also. Thanks again to the patrons. Stay awesome. Remember to always be good to yourself. Don't let the holidays stress you out. And until next time, Tinfoil Gang, peace.